There's no reason to live in fear of pain and death. Accustom thyself to believe that death is nothing to us, for good and evil implies sentience, and death is deprivation of all sentience. Therefore, a right understanding that death is nothing to us makes the immortality of life enjoyable, not by adding to life an illimitable time, but by taking away the yearning after immortality. For life has no terrors for him who has thoroughly apprehended that there are no terrors for him in ceasing to live. Foolish, therefore, is the man who says that he fears death, not because it will pain when it comes, but because it pains in the prospect. Whatsoever causes no annoyance when it is present, causes only a groundless pain in the expectation. Death, therefore, the most awful of evils, is nothing to us, seeing that when we are, that is not come, and when that is come, we are not. It is nothing then, either to the living or to the dead, for with the living it is not, and the dead exist no longer. But in a word, at one time man shunned death as the greatest of all evils, and at another time chose it as a respite from all the evils in life. The wise man does not deprecate life, nor does he fear the cessation of life. The thought of life is no offense to him, nor is the cessation of life regarded as an evil. And even as man choose of food not merely and simply the largest portion, but the more pleasant, so the wise seek to enjoy the time which is most pleasant, and not merely that which is the longest. And he who admonishes the young to live well, and the old to make a good end, speaks foolishly, not merely because of the desirableness of life, but because the same exercise at once teaches to live well and to die well. Much worse is he who says that it were good not to be born, but when once one is born, to pass with all the speed through the gates of Hades. For if he truly believes this, why does he not depart from life? It were easy for him to do so, if once he were firmly convinced. If he speaks only in mockery, his words are foolishness, for those who hear believe him not. This is one of the most dense but also most inspiring paragraphs. Let's try to pull the strings one by one and see their implications. The proposition is that we shouldn't fear death, because death is nothing to human beings. It is a word to design a status of non-living, which is something that we may never experience meanwhile we live. Good and evil can be distinguished only in the field of sentience, of all the things that can be experienced, and that, on the contrary, it is only the cessation of sentience. If we understand these, any fear about it disappears, and only then we can enjoy fully our existence, because we give up the impossible dreams of immortality, and we accept that our time is limited, so we have to make the best use possible of these, up until we have it. Giving up the fear of death, we can give up any fear as long as we live, but on the contrary, those who persist in fearing death will spend their time in constant apprehension for something that is not present. This argument was brilliantly used later also from Seneca to define anxiety as the irrational present discouragement motivated from a future possibility that didn't materialize yet, and in some cases may also never appear. Epicurus cuts short on this dynamic. Death doesn't cause any disturb neither when it is present, so it is even more irrational to be distressed at the thought that it may arrive. The main argument at this stage is developed explicitly. Death is nothing to us, because we cannot be outside of our life. This means that when we live, we are not dead, and when we are dead, we won't be any more conscious of anything. This was often summarized in Epicurean circles in ancient Rome, a few centuries after. There was a specific motto: non fui, fui, non sum, non curo, roughly translatable as I was not, I have been, I am not, I do not care. So death is nothing, both for the living, who cannot experience it meanwhile living, and also for the dead, who do not exist any longer. Even if we look at the discrepancies of opinions between human beings, goes on Epicurus, we can realize how this idea sounds indeed irrational. Some think death is the worst of all evil. For some wretched people, instead, death is a blessing, as it sets an end to all their suffering. The wise man should be in between, treating life and death as neutral condition. Life doesn't bring disturbance, same thing for the cessation of it. Two more arguments follow at this point. The first, with the analogy of food, is that we find pleasure in the tastiest bites, not in the biggest ones. And so it is for life. Whether if it's long or short, it is indifferent, as long as it is lived with the maximum pleasure. The second argument is for those who, looking at the lifespan, distinguish between good living for the young and good dying for the old. If the quality of life is important, not the quantity, these distinctions are without any ground. To live well and to die well are one and the same process. The last bullet of Epicurus, however, it is for those who think instead that life is a miserable state, a disgrace that, if it happens, it's better to end it as soon as possible. This is the view supported from the Silenus in his mythological dialogue with King Midas, but most probably the target of Epicurus here is a specific trend in his contemporary philosophy of the time, who advocated for the impossibility to reach happiness, and as such, death was the most preferable conditions for human beings. The most famous exponent of this view was Hegesaias of Cyrene, who wrote a book called Death by Starvation, that caused him a formal prohibition of his teaching from the king Ptolemy II Philadelphus. It is easy to imagine which could be Epicurus' argument against it, and I think that this last row doesn't need really any specific explanation.